It all comes down to this. 4 East Texas teams have one more team standing in their way of a state championship. Welcome into the state title edition of the ETSN podcast. I'm Clint Buckley, and I'm joined as always by Chandler Vessels. Chandler, are you ready for your first taste of the Texas high school football state championships?
Yeah, man. Texas high school football has been good to me so far. I wouldn't expect anything less, especially in the state championship games. Obviously, you would expect those to be the best games of the season. So, 4 teams in these championships, and I'm just really excited to get down there on Thursday and get things started.
Well, let's get right down to it, and I guess we'll go in chronological order, and we'll begin with our first game, which is the 2A Division II state championship game, 11 a.m. Thursday from AT&T Stadium. It's Tenaha against Munster, a pair of 15-0 teams. This is a rematch of the 2015 regional final, which Munster was able to come out on top, 33-16. Both teams are almost mirror images of one another if you look at the stats. Tenaha averages 52.9 points per game, and they allow 6.6. Munster, 52.7 and 6.7.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's not bad. When you're beating teams by an average of 53-7, that's pretty good. I don't think we should expect a 53-7 game Thursday between these two teams. It has the feeling of one of those games that's going to come down to the end, just based on the sheer dominance of both teams on either side of the ball. Munster, they get most of their offense from 2 players, and that's junior quarterback Parker McGrew. He comes in with over 3,600 yards of total offense. He's accounted for 56 touchdowns for them. And also they have a senior running back named Clay Stevens, who has close to 1,600 yards from scrimmage and has scored 24 times, both rushing and receiving. Tenaha, as y'all are well aware, is led by its 3-headed monster on offense. You've got quarterback C.J. Horn, who's approaching 3,500 yards of total offense. He's accounted for 53 touchdowns, so very similar numbers to Munster's quarterback. And then you have running back Ontario Thompson, who's fast approaching 2,500 yards on the season rushing. He's up to 34 touchdowns on the ground. And then, of course, you've got Trey Gardner, who's probably their best all-around player. On offense, he's got 1,447 yards from scrimmage and 21 touchdowns. Most of that is receiving. But, of course, he plays a big factor on the defensive end as well as special teams. More on him and a little bit later on in the show. I think the key to this one will be Tenaha's running game against a big and physical front for Munster. They are very big and abnormally big for a school of Munster's size. They have a lot of big kids up front, and I think it's going to be a challenge for Tenaha. It'd be a challenge for most teams going up against a big front like Munster. And as I mentioned, Ontario Thompson, who's been great all season long for Tenaha at running back, he has at least 100 yards in 14 consecutive games. The only game he did not eclipse 100 was the season opener against Joaquin. Will that continue against a really good run defense for Munster? I think that's going to be a key in this one. If he can get over 100 or even more than that, I think Tenaha stands a really good chance of winning this game because they're so balanced on offense. And if they're able to both run and pass equally effective, I think that bodes well for Tenaha. So, the big one in this, the big key is going to be, can Tenaha establish the run, and can Ontario Thompson do what he's been doing all season long against probably the best front that Tenaha has faced this season. Later on Thursday, we've got the 3A Division II state championship game between Newton and Gunnar, another pair of unbeaten teams clashing at AT&T Stadium. Kickoff is set for 7 p.m. Thursday. Chandler, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, obviously, Gunter's... Both teams are great, State championship game, you're not going to find any bad teams there.
No lucky teams here.
Yeah, as Coach Newton coach W.T. Johnson told me a couple days ago, there's no dogs left. So Gunter doesn't do much passing though. They like to run the ball. It's once again Newton's going to face a team that is pretty run dominant. That's like the 3rd week in a row, I think. They faced Wascom in the regional final, and then last week they got Bowling and that Vernon Jackson, the Alabama commit. This is just a really great running back that they had to go up against. And this week they're going to face a team that's averaging 315 yards per game on the ground.
That's a lot.
Yeah. They to put it in perspective, they've attempted 76 passes all season long, so that's about 5 per game. So you pretty much know what's going to happen when you're going up against this team.
And I'm guessing those 5 attempts are on purpose.
Yeah,
but they're serving a purpose. They're not being forced to throw 5 times a game. They're throwing
Definitely
when they
not.
want to.
Definitely not. But they're led by running back Dylan Jantz. The thing that surprises me about this, it's a team that's runs the ball so well, has over 4,000 yards as a team on the season so far. Only one 1,000-yard rusher, and he's barely over 1,000 yards. He's got like 1,061, and that's Dylan Jantz. So
a lot of contributions.
Yeah, they're getting it from a lot of people. I think they have like 5 guys who have at least 400 yards on the ground. So obviously Dylan Jantz is really good, but they've got Braden Clopton too, who's got like 800 yards. Dalen Bauer, he's got 700. So Newton's going to have a lot of guys to focus on in that backfield. It's not just going to be one guy, sort of like last week when they had against Bowling,
right?
Like Vernon Jackson pounding them time after time. It's going to be several different guys who can do several different things. So it's going to be a lot more challenging for them to stop that. And I think another key to this game, Newton started off last week kind of slow. They went down 14-0,
yep.
And I think if they do that here against Gunter, it's not going to end well for them. They're not going to be able to overcome that deficit so easily,
right?
Because I feel like Gunter's a little bit better of a team than Bowling is, even though Jackson was obviously a great player.
Yeah, 31 wins in a row. That would seem to suggest you're pretty good at football. 31
straight wins. They're no slouches on defense either. They're giving up just 7.1 points per game this season.
Wow.
So that offense is going to have its work cut out for it too. But a guy who's really come on for Newton these playoffs and really this season has been Darwin Barlow. He just passed the 2,000-yard mark with his game last week. He has 37 touchdowns to lead East Texas in that category. He is prone to breaking off on big plays. Last week he had a touchdown run of 53 yards and touchdown run of 63 yards. And then he had a hook and lateral that was a 69-yard touchdown. So he's got some speed on him, and it's going to be difficult for Gunter's defense as well. Newton's defense isn't the only one that's going to be facing a challenge. So I think this has the potential to be one of the better games that we see this week.
I agree.
I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I think what makes Gunnar so unique and so hard to stop is the uniqueness of their offense. I remember watching them last year in the state championship game. They run this odd. They run out of the pistol, but it's an option. Like it's a quirky offense that you really don't see very much anywhere at any level. And I think that it's obviously it's having an effect on the opponents because they haven't been beaten in 2 years. So I think it's going to be it's going to be that old classic matchup. You've got speed and athleticism against scheme. Gunnar has a scheme that's been unbeatable for 31 straight games, whereas Newton has all the talent in the world. They're probably the most talented team in 3A in the state. If you look at just they've probably got 4 or 5 future Division I players on the roster. So we'll see which wins out on Thursday night. But like you said, I think it has the potential to be one of the best games of the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. And then on Friday, we start at 11 a.m., the 4A Division I state championship game. We've got Carthage and Kennedale. I'm really looking forward to this one. Carthage 15-0, Kennedale 14-1, but that one loss came to West Orange Stark, which is playing for the 4A Division II championship. More on them later. Carthage going for their 6th state title in the last 10 seasons. That's crazy. I mean, it's mind-blowing. I mean, I think we take it for granted. Oh, it's Carthage. They're going to do this every year. But, if you stop and think about it, that's remarkable.
It's a dynasty.
What they've done. I mean, we're not talking about the pros where you can sign guys for long-term deals. I mean, these kids are graduating, every 4 years, and new guys come in and people leave. And just what a tremendous job that Scott Surratt has done there, building up that program since he's been there. And Kennedale is appearing in its first state title game. So that there's an interesting dynamic there. You've got Carthage that has all this experience. They were there last year, won it last year. Kennedale has played in that stadium before. In fact, their semifinal game last week was played at AT&T Stadium, but it wasn't for the state championship. That brings on a unique set of challenges. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, the experience of Carthage against Kennedale, which is making its first trip to a state championship game. Kennedale operates out of the wing tee, and it has plenty of speed to burn in the backfield. They've got 2 2,000-yard rushers, and Jaden Knowles, who's up at 2,200 yards, 34 touchdowns, and then Deshaun Curvin, 2191, and 41 touchdowns. So between them, they have 75 rushing touchdowns, just the 2 of them. So if you want a key in stopping Kennedale, it's those 2 guys. They average 54.5 points per game, and in the playoffs, just listen to this, they've kept up that pace. They've scored 59, 42, 45, 63, and 54. Those 63 and 54 have come in the last 2 weeks against two really good teams, Kaufman and Stephenville. So they're rolling on offense. Now, you guys know all about Carthage. It starts with their running back, Keontae Ingram, who is now over 2,000 yards for the second straight season. He is now one of just 3 Carthage backs with 5,000 for his career, and he trails just 2 players, Chris Briggs and Tevin Pipkin, on the all-time school career rushing list at Carthage. But for all that we talk about Ingram, and he's a great player, rightfully so. I mean, he's going to Texas for a reason. He's tremendous. Carthage is also strong in the passing game. They've got Gunnar Capps, who's closing in on 3,500 yards passing. He's got 45 touchdown passes. And the receiving core is deep. They've got 3 really good weapons out there with D. Bowens, Makai Colbert, and DeWaylon Ingram. All 3 of those guys, or 2 of those guys, Bowens and Ingram, are over 1,000 yards, and then Colbert, who stars on defense as well, he also is a big factor on the offensive side as well. The key in this game is going to be, like I mentioned, Kennedale's rushing attack against Carthage's defense. When you're as unbalanced as Kennedale is, they run the ball 87% of the time. When you're as unbalanced as that, you have to run the ball to be successful. If you can't run it like you're accustomed to, things will start to break down. So if you're Carthage, if you can figure out a way to slow down Kennedale's run game, which, I mean, easier said than done, a few teams have been able to do that, as I mentioned. Those 2 backs, Knowles and Curvin, are outstanding. But if they can find a way to slow them down, I think the Bulldogs will be in pretty good shape, because we've seen Carthage's defense has a tendency to create turnovers and score off those turnovers. I think they have 5 different players that have defensive touchdowns this year on defense, and I think they have 7 or 8 defensive TDs on the season. So when the Carthage is at their best defensively when they're playing opportunistic ball, and that usually happens when they force an offense to be one-dimensional. If they can get Kennedale to put it up in the air more than they would like, I think that will serve Carthage well and potentially lead to their 6th state championship in the last 10 seasons. And then closing it all out right afterwards at 3 p.m. Friday from AT&T Stadium, it's the 4A Division II championship game against another unbeaten versus unbeaten. We got Pleasant Grove at 15-0 against 2-time defending state champion West Orange Stark. Chandler, what are you looking forward to the most in this one?
Yeah, it's sort of another one of those power teams versus a team that's sort of risen up and had a great season.
Yep.
Pleasant Grove is making their first state championship appearance as well. And West Orange Stark is on a 40-game winning streak.
Longest in the state.
Yeah, four straight state championship appearances, you said. They've obviously got the history on their side, so it's one of those dynasties against sort of an up-and-comer, I guess you would say. But what a season it's been for Josh Gibson and Pleasant Grove so far. They've done a lot of their damage with single plays. They have the potential to break off on big plays on, it seems like, any given down. They've got several playmakers in the backfield. TJ Cole is getting close to 1,700 yards on the season. Chauncey Martin's back there too. Bruce Garrett. So they've got a sort of triple-headed monster back there in the backfield.
Yeah, I think all 3 of them now are over 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah, it's a great group of backs that they've got back there. But the thing that makes Pleasant Grove also so difficult to beat is you can't really just key in on those guys, because when you do, Ben Harmon hits you with a long touchdown pass. He's I don't know the exact numbers, but he's got, like, I think close to maybe a little over 100 attempts this season and 2,000 yards.
Yeah.
So
and he's got like 26 touchdowns. So a quarter of his attempts go for touchdowns.
Yeah. So he's got a great weapon in Carson Cox to throw to back in the receiving corps. So their offense is multifaceted, and it's not just one guy. That's what makes them so difficult to beat. But I mean, they're going to be going up against a great defense in West Orange Stark. This West Orange Stark defense has been sort of what they've leaned on this year. They're giving up just 9.5 points per game. It's what they've done all season. And I think that the key for Pleasant Grove is going to be not getting frustrated, because they're going to have to, maybe gain 5 yards at a time
instead of 30.
Yeah. So it's going to take a little bit longer for them to score. They're not going to score as many points as they usually do, but if they can just keep their heads about them and keep fighting and going at it and not give up, 4 or 5 yards still gets the job done. So,
I think a big key, too, will be how Pleasant Grove's defense plays on that, because the defense is really going to have to play well, because the offense, like you mentioned, is probably not going to have the same type of success that they've had most of the season. They're not going to be, scoring, 40 points most likely against this defense. So the defense is going to have to do a job of keeping them in the game until the offense can maybe settle in the second half and start wearing down the West Orange Stark defense, because I think they can do that if they're able to stick with the run and not abandon the game plan. If they're able to continue to go at the defense, I mean, that's going to take its toll, because Pleasant Grove's awfully big up front on the offensive line, and just repeated attempts, up the middle or around the edge, I mean, that can tire out a defense. So the Pleasant Grove defense needs to keep them in the game and not let it get out of hand early.
Yeah. And I mean, the main guy they're going to want to watch on defense is their quarterback, Chaka Watson. He's a dual threat guy. He's a guy who's capable of, busting off on some big runs, making some long passes, much like the players at Pleasant Grove. So he's the main guy. He's sort of the number one threat that they have. They don't have a ton outside of him, but if they can really key in on him and slow him down, and then, as you mentioned, get some of those 4 or 5 yard runs, move the ball slowly, methodically, I think Pleasant Grove has a chance to win this and make this a special season for them.
All right, well, we got 4 chances at bringing a state title home back to East Texas. I feel pretty good we'll get at least 1.
Yeah.
I mean,
probably 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the question that all 4 of them could win.
Yeah.
But I would settle for half. I would settle for 2 out of 4. At least 1. You got to have 1. I mean, that would be pretty disappointing to go all this way.
0-4.
And go 0 for 4. But I'm looking forward to it. Guys, it's been a fun ride. We're sad that it has to come to an end this week. Before we get out of here, we want to give a quick shout-out to our players of the week. On offense, it's Tenaha running back Ontario Thompson, 13 carries, 241 yards, 4 touchdowns, and last week's 60-22 semifinal win over Burton. And on defense, Trey Gardner, the safety, Tenaha sweeps it again. He picks off 2 passes, returns one of those for a touchdown, 95 yards, fumble recovery, and a pass breakup, and the Tigers win. So back-to-back weeks, we have one school sweeping the Players of the Week. Last week it was St. Augustine. This week it's Tenaha. So congratulations, Ontario Thompson and Trey Gardner. Like I said, it's been fun, and it's sad it has to come to an end this week. But before you know it, August of 2018 will be here. I know it's hard to picture that right now with the weather we have outside right now, but it'll be here before you know it. Chandler, it's been fun breaking down all the games with you this week on the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yeah, I'm ready to get to these games this year, and then I guess we'll see you guys next year for the start of 2018 football season. So.
Yep. Well, follow along all week on ETSN.fm. We'll have comprehensive state championship game coverage all through the week. Chandler and I will both be there Thursday and Friday at AT&T Stadium. So if you see us around town, come say hi. We won't bite. But for the last time this season, this is Clint Buckley for Chandler Vessels. Everyone have a safe and happy holiday season.